Welcome to the Explainer. You know, when a relationship between law enforcement and a local community fractures, it can feel like the damage is permanent. But today, we're exploring a deeply important piece of history that proves otherwise. It's a fascinating case study on how the RCMP's H Division, their Nova Scotia branch, and the province's Black communities actually did the incredibly hard work of repairing a broken trust. We're not just looking back at the past here, we're looking at a real, structured blueprint for reconciliation. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp the solution, we first have to understand the mindset of the era, and this quote from a 1998 article by reporter Suzanne Hiller just completely nails it. She described the situation with this potent metaphor. Both sides fell into a pothole. Now they have to get out of it, pick up the pieces, and start again. I mean, it perfectly acknowledges a shared, gritty reality. The relationship was a mess. There wasn't some magic wand that was going to fix it. It was absolutely going to require both the community and the police to get in there, roll up their sleeves, and pick up the pieces together. But just how deep was this pothole? Let's take a look at Section 1, a fractured relationship, focusing on the specific tensions in Cole Harbour and North Preston. Back in the early 1990s, the tension was, well, it was palpable. The source material outlines some major ongoing concerns between the RCMP and the community of North Preston. A lot of this stemmed from how racial incidents at Cole Harbour High School were handled, plus the very messy aftermath of a local prostitution crackdown. The disconnect got so severe and the trust eroded so completely that people were publicly questioning how the RCMP was operating. It literally reached a boiling point where residents were bluntly stating to the press, Preston doesn't need the RCMP. That is the sheer scale of the divide we're dealing with here. Now, when a community says they no longer need you, leadership basically has a choice: get defensive or get to work. They chose the latter, bringing us to Section 2, steps toward healing, and laying the groundwork for change. The timeline on this is absolutely critical. Right in 1990, H Division's commanding officer established the Black Advisory Committee. This was a direct move to reach out across the division and tackled the big issues, things like recruitment, race relations training, and the stark lack of visible minorities in the force. By 1994, they forged a formal partnership between the RCMP, the Black Cultural Society of Nova Scotia, and Parks Canada. And the tangible result of all those meetings? Well, in 1996, they opened an actual community policing office right inside the Black Cultural Center. They were physically planting themselves in the community to serve places like Cherrybrook Lake Loon, East Preston, and North Preston. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these early partnerships created symbols of lasting unity. Out of these discussions came the idea for an RCMP Black Wall of Honor, placed right in the Black Cultural Center. And they named it the Jonathan A. Skeet Memorial Wall of Honor, after the late African-Canadian RCMP member from Sydney, Cape Breton, who tragically passed away from cancer in 1987. You know, this wasn't just a plaque on a wall. It was a deeply meaningful tribute to a man who loved the communities he served. By honoring his legacy, the RCMP was showing a visible, permanent commitment to a shared history. But a wall is stationary, right? They needed to get out into the province. So, that brings us to Section 3, Operation Show and Tell, focusing on active community engagement. So Operation Show and Tell was this highly structured three-phase push. The specific goal: bring Nova Scotia-born Black RCMP members back home to connect directly with the community through multi-day events. Phase 1 kicked off in 1995 at the Black Cultural Center. Then, for Phase 2 in 1996, they traveled to Sydney, which was Constable Skeet's hometown, and installed a replica Wall of Honor at a local junior high school. Finally, Phase 3 brought the whole operation to Yarmouth in November 1998. And looking at this event in Yarmouth in 1998, it's just deeply poignant. Yarmouth wasn't some random location. It was actually Constable Skeet's final operational posting before his death. Plus, it's the birthplace of Nova Scotia's first Black member in the force, Corporal Clarence Bodden. And to add even more gravity to it, this event perfectly coincided with the RCMP's 125th anniversary. They designed and installed a second replica wall at the local high school. It just goes to show how intentional, structured, and profoundly respectful this outreach really was. These events laid a great foundation. But to mediate real conflict, you need the right people in the room. This leads us to Section 4, First Commissioned Black Officer, and the incredible story of Ted Upshaw. At a time when the tension in North Preston was at an all-time high, the RCMP made a very strategic move. They put out an offer asking Black Nova Scotia-born members if they'd be willing to transfer back home to work out of the Cole Harbour Detachment.
It was a brilliant strategy, honestly. Bring in officers who inherently understood the local culture, people with real roots there, to step up and act as community mediators.
And one of the members who stepped up was Sergeant Ted Upshaw. When you look at his background, he was literally tailor-made for this challenge. Born in Windsor, Nova Scotia, so he's a true local, he had a sociology degree from Acadia University where, by the way, he was a total standout athlete, winning the CIU National Basketball Championship in 1976. He joined the RCMP in 1981, put in the work out west and in Ottawa, and then, in 1997, he accepted the offer to come home. He stepped right into the fire, mediating intense community and police meetings. He had the local respect, the background, and the rank to actually bridge that gap.
And his dedication paid off in a massive way. In August of 1999, Sergeant Upshaw made history. He was commissioned to the rank of inspector, making him the first self-identified African-Canadian commissioned officer in the entire history of the RCMP. It's a huge milestone. They even held a reception to celebrate it right at the Black Cultural Center. But he didn't just get a promotion, he actually took over command of the Cole Harbour Detachment itself. The man who came back to be a mediator was now the commander.
Now, as great as this local success story is, the final impact goes way beyond Nova Scotia. This brings us to Section 5, A National Legacy of Unity, where we see how a local pilot became a national standard. And this brilliantly illustrates how local solutions can ripple outward. Back in 1998, that Cole Harbour Detachment launched a humble pilot called the Community Constables Program, working directly with 2 individuals from the local Black communities. Well, the pilot was an overwhelming success. The mold was officially cast. The program grew into a provincial mandate, and then, by September 2005, the entire force adopted it nationally under their employment equity component. So a specific fix for a fractured community in Nova Scotia literally reshaped the standard for policing across the country.
Which circles us right back to the pothole. The struggle, the anger, the public outcry in the early 90s, it was undeniably painful. But as Assistant Commissioner Dwight Bishop pointed out in 1998, sometimes it takes a struggle to move things along. If that relationship hadn't fractured, we might never have seen the intense drive that created the Black Advisory Committee, or Operation Show and Tell, or the pathways that elevated leaders like Inspector Upshaw. Bishop ended his speech to the community with a very simple thank you for working with us, because ultimately, it was a shared success.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that repairing trust isn't about avoiding the friction, it's about structuring the hard conversations. It requires visible representation, real community partnerships, and empowering local leaders. As we look around at the fractures in our own modern world, I want to leave you with this thought. How can the blueprints of H Division's bridge building, this hard-fought journey from a pothole to a true partnership, help communities heal their own divides today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you next time.